Mayor Seaman is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Burgell.
Here.
Councilmember Castellano.
Here.
Councilmember Messner is absent tonight. Councilmember Allison.
Here.
Councilmember Arroyo is in the building.
Thank you. And would all of you care to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could we please have a report out of closed session?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. No actions were taken in closed session.
Thank you. All right, for Mayor's announcement, we have several presentations this evening. Our first presentation will be John McManus from Waterfront Recovery Services. You can stand at the dais. Would you rather stand at the dais? No, I was talking to Ruby. No, you don't want. Do you want to stand at the dais? Or?
Hi, folks. Hello, everybody. Bear with me for one moment.
Staying at Humboldt Hill, camping out and whatnot, and
Boom. All right. So I am John McManus. I am the Executive Director of Alcohol Drug Care Services, as well as the Executive Director of Waterfront Recovery Services, as well as being the co-clinical director there. I've brought with me Dr. Ruby Bayan, who is our Medical Director, and our Assistant Clinical Director, Nicole Vance. Before I jump into this, I just want to let you know Waterfront Recovery Services is a project that me and Dr. Bayan had pursued pretty rigorously due to the lack of treatment and what treatment consisted of in the area prior to opening Waterfront. I was the Executive Director of Alcohol Drug Care Services and was tasked with pursuing drug Medi-Cal certification. We ran out of 4 little Victorians on the corner of 14th and C, and then 3 of them with 6-bed occupancy and a detox program with 9. We would serve roughly 750 clients in detox a year. We were allowed to provide no medical services during that time. We were allowed to provide no psychiatric stabilization. So both Dr. Bayan and myself, realizing the acuity and illness of the clients that we were dealing with, which were predominantly homeless, had way more issues than we were able to deal with in that venue. So Waterfront is, the realizing the goal for Dr. Bayan and myself. So what Waterfront Recovery Services is a 56-bed residential substance use disorder treatment program, and we have 2 separate components. One is a 20-bed medically managed detoxification program. The other is a longer-term 36-bed residential treatment program. So the mission of this program is to heal and empower any person with substance use disorder in a safe, nurturing environment and to assist them in becoming a respected, responsible, and productive member of the community. Our goal is to improve their lives, for them to reattach with their families, be able to work, be able to rent a house or buy a house, be able to pursue a scholastic goal. So our medically based detox program, and just bear with me, I want to explain this, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Bayan. Waterfront Recovery Services is the first incidental medical services certified detoxification program in Humboldt County. What IMS means is optional services provided at a facility by a healthcare practitioner or staff under the supervision of a healthcare practitioner to address medical issues associated with detoxification, treatment, or recovery services. And it allows us to have a prescriber on site as the primary thing. And it allows us to have medical psychiatric personnel on site, labs to be drawn, CWA and cow scales to be utilized for the detoxification process, and immediate medical response to detoxification complications. And I'm going to let Dr. Bayan take over.
What I would like to emphasize is Waterfront Recovery Services. It's a holistic treatment of
Doctor,
substance abuse.
would you be willing to speak into the mic, please, so we can all hear you?
Can
Thank
you,
you.
is that working?
Yeah.
It's a holistic treatment, not only for substance abuse, but also for psychiatric illness and some medical problems. Our goal, our primary job is to take care of those who have addiction problems. However, we're the only dual diagnosis facility where we take care too of those patients with substance abuse. And we also take care of some of the medical problems, like people who have diabetes, hypertension, people who were at the St. Joe needing chronic IV infusion for their endocarditis. We take care of all of that. And it's not just, we detox alcohol, opiates, meth, and benzodiazepine like Klonopin, Xanax, and so on. So not only do we take care of those in the medical detox, we also take care of those people in residential. And again, we make sure that we address in a holistic way, in a very humanistic way, their substance abuse problem, their psychiatric problem, their medical problem, and some of the psychosocial problem. Before they leave the program, we have made some arrangement for follow-up for medical care, mental health care, and place to stay. And all our graduates are able to come back and continue to attend groups. Also, the very first service in Humboldt and probably in the surrounding counties is the Family Recovery Services. Substance abuse cannot be treated without family intervention. And so we have that service, and we're hoping that we may start from Waterfront and later on be able to have this be available, not just for all the Humboldt County, but also other places.
Awesome. So our longer-term residential program, we use ASAM criteria and dimensions of care to develop individualized treatment plans and measure progress. And the typical duration of treatment is 30, 60, or 90 days. And we utilize this extended period of time to address all biopsychosocial needs of our residents. Our goal is to help our residents understand addiction, learn healthy coping skills, and to prepare them for a healthy and productive return to the community. And some of the RTC components are individual and group counseling sessions, and it's an all evidence-based curriculum. 3 of them are incorporated, actually. As Dr. Bayan was saying, the family recovery group, which is offered on the weekends, mental health monitoring, parenting classes, and case management services. So, since opening on November 1st of 2017, we just had our second year anniversary. We've had 1,131 total combined treatment admissions. 910 of those were at detox and 229 longer-term residential. So some of our community partners are St. Joseph's Hospital. particularly with the endocarditis patients that would normally be sitting in a bed for 60 days, we can bring them in. Humboldt County DHHS, they have supported us extraordinarily well. Recently, we lost Measure Z funding, and the county and EPD got together, and we have a new detox contract, and hopefully will be signed by the Board of Supervisors in November, allowing us 8 beds of detoxification. We have an extraordinary relationship with the Eureka Police Department. They will bring us in clients that, and we can take them in, detox them if they meet our criteria. It's fantastic. We work as, we step down to Open Door Community Health Center for our longer-term medication-assisted therapy in Suboxone patients. We have a contract with United Indian Health Center. We also have a contract with Tri-West to serve veterans that we recently got. Our project initially was funded. We were a partnership with RCAA. Eventually, we absorbed that. But to get started, we received money from the Wellbeing Trust from St. Joseph's, and also from Partnership Health. I do want to say we hit every mark for that. The ultimate goal for this program was to become Drug Medi-Cal certified, and that would allow anybody with Medi-Cal in our area to access services. You wouldn't have to be criminal justice referred. You wouldn't have to, go through the various hoops that it takes to get into our program. So we've hit every mark, including achieving Drug Medi-Cal certification, including achieving IMS certification standards. So some of our client demographics, 58% of detox clients reported being homeless at the time of intake. And this, I have to say, this is from a CCRP report between October of 2018 and April of 2019. So 58% of our clients reported homeless at the time of intake, while 64% of residential clients reported being homeless at intake. 61% of our detox clients had been diagnosed with mental illness, while 49% of residential clients were diagnosed with mental illness. Median age for both detox and residential clients at the time of intake was 39. Median age of first use for both detox and residential clients was 18 years. And in that slice of time, some of these seem, I would say that the overall, when we had begun admitting people, I'd say the age was lower than that when people began using drugs. 72% of our detox clients reported Humboldt as their county of birth, and 88% of detox clients reported being unemployed in the last 30 days. And I would say that may have stretched on for 95% of them for years. I want to go over, so our primary challenge right now is money, and it kills me to say that. But, so we hit every mark, including Drug Medi-Cal certification. We got it in April of 2019. This is we are currently waiting on California DHCS and Partnership Health Plan of California to finalize the implementation plan for the Drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system in our region. In the northern region. That means 9 counties up north. So currently the biggest challenge is our Drug Medi-Cal certification is useless until Partnership and the state can come to this agreement. So they have a pretty strong commitment to have it fully implemented by February of 2020. So we were scheduling, our financial planning had gotten us up to the beginning of this fiscal year. And we have stretched and we have stretched. So right now we are seeking every source of funding we can to last until we can draw down the Medi-Cal reimbursement. So St. Joseph's Hospital has, they're going to be assisting us. There may be some other funders in the wings as well. So that's one of our challenges. The other challenge is community perception of services offered. You want it?
Well, since there is a deficiency of mental health services, when we told the other agencies that we do take dual diagnosis, we were flooded with patients who are primarily difficult psychiatric problems than substance abuse. And we were almost castigated for not taking them because we told them that we're dual diagnosis, with the misunderstanding that the primary reason for admission is substance abuse and not mental health. Because there is a problem with long-term care for our mental health patients. And as a matter of fact, now we take people from sempervirens as long as they're stable with their mental health problems, and most usually they're not. But we're in cooperation with mental health. We're in cooperation with the EPD community outreach, that if we can accept the patient, as long as the patient is able to engage in the program. Obviously, they cannot engage in the program if they're actively psychotic or medically too ill to be admitted.
Okay, so I think I am going to just play a quick testimonial.
And just to let you know that the person who's going to be saying a testimony, this is one of our first IV infusion patients from St. Joseph who had endocarditis, who otherwise will sit in the hospital for 6 weeks, but he came to our service and got treated right away.
Oh, what's that?
At Humboldt Hill, camping out and whatnot, and I hit my hand on a bicycle crank and it skins it. And I think nothing in the moment, and 2 or 3 months later, my hand swelled up like a football. I caught Mercer in my hand. In December the 10th last year, I finally went to the hospital, and the Mercer had eaten holes through the bones in my hand. And they said if I didn't at least quit using dope for 4 months, that I would probably die. And they gave me the opportunity of coming to Waterfront to work on my addiction problems and whatnot. When I came here, I met wonderful people, and I fought it from in the hospital too, but I knew the only way I don't get out of the hospital was in there for 30 days, that I don't have to come to rehab, or they wasn't going to let me have my antibiotics. So I came here with all intentions of just filling my antibiotics out and telling people what they wanted to hear and leaving. But the stuff I learned here stuck with me. For the first time in 30 years, somebody asked me not what happened, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. And I realized that I've been traumatized as a child, and I have way many more problems and addiction that leads to this. And there's no way around it. Today is one of the only things that's keeping me clean. I look for excuses in life, and I guess everybody else does too. And I'm obligated to Waterfront for what they've shown to me. They've given me a job. Now I'm going to school to hopefully be able to share my story and maybe help somebody else. I know the closer I stay to the recovery scene, the better I'm going to do in life. This is the first year in 38 years, I'll be 39 December the 1st, that I have been clean. I've had a job all year. I've had a telephone number that I haven't had in a decade. I've got an ID. I lost all of my identification of myself, my self-worth, and everything else. And in 1 year, I've worked really hard. I've got taken care of my hepatitis C. I'm working on my dental, and I believe I'm healthier than I've ever been in my entire life. It's just the love that these people have shown me. I want,
It's gonna come back.
I would, never thought I would in college. Having a job and people that I consider friends and loved ones and family. I don't believe you get to choose your family. Your family chooses you.
So I could go on forever. All three of us could, but I guess, do you ask questions or?
So do we have any questions from council? Comment? Councilmember Allison?
I just want to say thanks for all you guys do. I work at St. Joe's, been there about 6 years now. I work on the progressive care unit, which is pretty much ground zero for acute alcohol withdrawal. And I've noticed a huge difference since you guys opened in lack of readmittance. Sometimes we get patients who'd come 20, 30 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
And just be a huge, just burden on the system and for themselves. And it's nice that some people have places to go and get the help they need. So thank you guys and keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to step back for a moment, and I just want to let anybody that's here for D1, the cultural tree plan, it will not be discussed tonight. It will be moved to the November 19th meeting. So just so you're aware of that. And we're going to go back and do proclamations. So Councilmember Allison, you have the Zero Waste Day proclamation.
Yeah, do we have someone here to accept the zero waste proclamation? Please stand. Awesome. I'll go ahead and read this into the record here. So this is a proclamation in recognition of Zero Waste Day. Whereas Eureka residents have a deep appreciation for the waterways, wildlife, and natural beauty of our city, and whereas Eureka's estimated daily waste generation through everyday habits and business operations has gradually increased in recent years to 6 pounds per person per day, and whereas sustainable materials management and the zero waste method emphasize proactive waste prevention to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions of manufacturing single-use plastics and overpackaging, and whereas the city is currently developing a zero waste action plan to reduce the waste we generate in Eureka, and whereas the city is pleased to have been awarded from Zero Waste Humboldt 4 water bottle refill stations to reduce thousands of single-use plastic water bottles in our waste stream. Now therefore, I, Austin Allison, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, is pleased to join the county and other Humboldt cities and business groups in recognizing November 15th, 2019 as Zero Waste Day, a day each year we acknowledge the city's waste reduction progress and urge residents to commit to new waste reduction habits.
Yeah, please say a few words.
Councilmember Allison, and good evening to everyone here. My name is Nish Wells. I am an HSU student working with Zero Waste Humboldt's Refill Not Landfill project to help reduce single-use plastic water bottles. And on behalf of Zero Waste Humboldt, I would like to thank the Eureka City Council for acknowledging Zero Waste Day. This will be the 5th annual Zero Waste Day, a time for Humboldt residents and businesses to recognize our progress in reducing waste, develop infrastructure necessary to support waste prevention and materials reuse, and to continue adopting new zero waste habits. Much of our services in the community have been quietly behind the scenes. We've trained more than 50 local businesses in the zero waste method, which has helped us to reduce waste and overhead costs. In 2020, we will be launching a zero waste business certification program. We've raised funds to place 10 water bottle refill stations in local government and high school buildings, which to date have kept over 100,000 single-use plastic water bottles from entering our waste stream. We have awarded 4 of these stations as well to the city of Eureka, as mentioned. Zero Waste Humboldt has worked with the City of Arcata to develop its Zero Waste Action Plan, and we are now assisting the City of Eureka in developing its plan. Each year, more community groups join us in public education and zero waste activities. Our volunteers will be at the North Coast Co-op on November 15th, Zero Waste Day, to demonstrate zero waste shopping. Thank you again for acknowledging our efforts to reduce waste in Eureka and in Humboldt County. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Law Enforcement Records and Professional Staff Day. Councilmember Castellano.
Great. Let's see. This is the proclamation in recognition of Law Enforcement Records and Professional Staff Day. Is November 6, 2019. Whereas law enforcement agencies throughout the state depend upon law enforcement records and professional staff personnel to provide them with these vital services, and whereas information is the lifeblood of any organization, and accurate law enforcement records must be created, collected, processed, maintained, disseminated, and disposed of in accordance with local, state, and federal laws. And whereas citizens have an expectation of law enforcement records are maintained with accuracy and integrity, overseen by staff dedicated to continual professional development and the highest standards of operational efficiency. And whereas enforcement records and professional staff personnel are crucial to helping law enforcement agencies identify, pursue, capture, and process suspected law violators. And whereas these professionals continually use their expertise and experience to assist in serving the public, maintaining criminal statistics, and assisting patrol and investigators track felons and improve apprehension strategies, and whereas it is important to recognize California's law enforcement records and support personnel for their valuable contributions to our law enforcement system, and whereas the Eureka Police Department Records Section is responsible for the integrity of law enforcement records for prosecutors, allied agencies, and citizens, tracking missing and unwanted persons, accounting for recovered stolen vehicles, firearms and property, live scan and fingerprint services, call taking, parking enforcement responsibilities, creation and verification of statistical reports for the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigations, and a host of behind-the-scenes duties in support of the department and city goals. Now, therefore, I, Leslie Castellano, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby recognize and express support for the Eureka Police Department's Records Section and professional staff personnel for their invaluable service to the department and the city, and proclaim November 6, 2019 as Law Enforcement Records and Professional Staff Day in Eureka, California. Is anyone here to receive the proclamation? Oh, perfect.
Good evening. I'm Amanda O'Neill. I'm the records manager of Eureka Police and here with most of our staff. I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for recognizing the professionals I'm honored to work with each day. The unique role of police records is often unsung, and yet their contribution to the efficient operation of the department is vital. The president of the California Police Chiefs Association, Ronald Lawrence, spoke recently at a conference I attended, and I think he coined a phrase that we'll glom onto for a while, identifying the role of police records as the final responder. Those who ensure everything behind the scenes is handled so the first responders can focus on their primary role in public safety. As the resolution referenced, the responsibilities of police records are extensive, continually evolving, with legislative mandates increasing in recent years and continuing to impact significantly the daily work of records. We embrace the challenges ahead and look forward to meeting the needs of modern policing and increasing standards of service. I commend each of my colleagues for their daily commitment to the citizens of Eureka, the department, and the men and women we serve with. And thank you for recognizing their dedication and hard work.
I have to take a moment to chime in if that's okay. So like the proclamation said, information truly is our lifeblood. and the accuracy and integrity of that information is key. Literally, cases can be won or lost on that, including things as serious as homicides. And so I can't stress enough how valuable having a team like this is. Our records department, I could say, looking anyone in the eye, has no peer in Humboldt County. We continually get praise and feedback from the district attorney's office, for instance, with the job that they do. I often like to say that you either occupy a position with which you've been entrusted or you elevate it. This team, under the leadership of Amanda O'Neill and Christine and the other members of the team, truly have elevated our record section. I couldn't be more proud of them, and it's one of those areas you just don't worry about. You know things are running very well. So thank you for this recognition, team. I am very, very proud of each of you. You're kind of the unsung, quiet professionals in our agency. You don't always get the attention, but you're very deserving. Thank you.
Okay, our last proclamation for this evening is Retired Teachers Week. Councilmember Arroyo.
Great, and will those who are going to receive this go ahead and come on up while I read it? Wonderful. So this proclamation is in recognition of Retired Teachers Week, November 3rd through 9th, 2019. Whereas the California Retired Teachers Association was formed by Laura E. Settle in 1929 at the start of the Great Depression, with the goal of relieving the economic hardships suffered by retired teachers, and has since become a leading advocate for providing teachers with sufficient retirement income for 90 years. And whereas California Retired Teachers Association also provides continuing support to active and future teachers, including grants, scholarships, and donations of more than $600,000 a year. And whereas a vast majority of California's retired teachers share a commitment to improve their communities through volunteer activities. And whereas retired teachers lead by example, including dozens of members who have given more than 4,000 hours of service. And whereas statewide, retired teachers can be found serving their communities in a host of activities. And whereas here in Eureka, local retired teachers volunteer in schools, museums, hospitals, other community organizations, and the food bank, and gave $2,500 in scholarships and $500 to our museums last year alone. And whereas the annual dollar value of this volunteer time donated throughout the state by retired teachers reached nearly $58 million during the most recent reporting period. Now therefore, I, Natalie Arroyo, on behalf of the Eureka City Council, do hereby recognize the vital role retired teachers fulfill in every community in California and honor their ongoing commitment to all teachers. And we therefore declare the week of November 3rd through 9th to be California Retired Teachers Week.
Thank you. Can you take a picture?
It's like something tells me I should come out there.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would.
Okay, great.
Thank you. On behalf of the retired teachers, administrators, other educators, and the active teachers, spouses, and friends who make up our membership, I would like to thank Eureka City Council for their proclamation. Are there educators in the room tonight? I suspect there are many, and all are welcome to join and support our goal of defending educator pensions, supporting education locally and statewide. Thank you very much.
So we'll move back to presentations, and just in case you came in late, the cultural tree plan, item D1, will be pulled, and we'll be talking about that December 19th. So if that's what you're here for, see you next time. So we're going to look at the Zero Waste Action Plan survey. Sierra? Have a presentation?
Just a couple of quick words. Might have to go all the way down. Well, hello, Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Sierra Jenkins. I am the Assistant Environmental Coordinator for Eureka, which is an environmental program underneath the Community Services Department. So the city of Eureka is in the beginning phases of a zero waste action plan, but we want as much input from the public as we can get. So we're launching a zero waste call to action for our community to work together so we can get as close as possible to zero waste, which will help us be more sustainable, efficient, and eco-friendly, and ultimately reduce our impact on the environment. So we have several things going on to make that happen. We've been doing a lot of social media outreach and other outreach in the community. But we have an event coming up this Sunday is what I want to talk about first. It's called Our Waste Revealed, and we've been working really hard within our department with Zero Waste Humboldt and with Recology to make this event happen. So what's going to happen is it's this Sunday at 10 o'clock from 9 to 11. We're going to have a free pancake breakfast. We're going to have raffle prizes. We're going to have zero waste activities. And the really exciting part is that some of you have actually volunteered to be there. Kim, Leslie, and Susan, I believe, are going to be there, so thank you so much for that. So you guys and some members of the public, if they want, the public is, of course, encouraged to be there and participate. We're going to provide the opportunity to work the recycling sorting line. So a lot of people don't really think about where their recyclables go or where their trash goes. Once it goes in that bin, it's out of sight, out of mind. So myself, Donna Wood, and Robin Prasker, we've all been to the Recology recycling sorting facility in Samoa, and it's a really enlightening experience to see that it's not, yes, they have big machinery, but it's hand people. You know, they're doing the work. They are hand sorting the items. And to get to see that and now see the whole process and get to possibly, if you want, experience it, get on the line, sort the recyclables, learn what's recyclable, what's not. So it's really interactive. We're not just telling you this is the way it is, this is how it's done. You're actually going to have the opportunity to participate. We're also going to provide tours of the facilities. So you'll get to walk around, see what happens with the contaminants, which are recyclables that are sent into the recycling but are actually not recyclable. You'll see where those go. You'll see what happens with paper. You'll see how everything is baled. So it's going to be a really cool experience overall. So we really want the public to be there, and we're also going to be providing the opportunity for public input at this event, and we have just launched, as of today, a zero waste baseline survey. So you'll be able to take the survey there as well, or if you want, now you can take it online. So moving from the event to the survey, that was launched today. And like I said, it's a baseline survey. It's not going to take a whole lot of time. We want not just residents of Eureka to take the survey. If you have any stake in Eureka, if you're a business owner or you work here or anything like that, we want you to get online, take that survey. So we will have some good hard data to start working on this zero waste action plan. So that's what we got so far. Any questions?
Sierra, where would they find the link? Where's the link located?
So, as part of our zero waste efforts, we have started a program called Go Zero Eureka, and we have a website dedicated specifically to those efforts. So it is gozeroeureka.org, and there is a drop-down bar in the top right corner. If you drop down, the survey will be right there. So gozeroeureka.org. We have some videos on there, some educational tips, the survey. And as time goes by, of course, we'll be adding more to that Go Zero Eureka. So we're super excited about that new program as well.
Councilmember Arroyo?
Did you say there were pancakes?
Yes,
I don't know if you did, but I heard there were pancakes.
Yes, pancakes and prizes. There will be workshops. We're going to have a beeswax wrap making station. We're going to have a sustainable, biodegradable stationery station. We'll have presentations from the cities, Zero Waste Humboldt and Recology. And everyone that's going to be doing those presentations are all very bright, amazing, wonderful, awesome people. So you're really going to learn a lot and have a great time and get fed and get prizes.
And there's also a jukebox that plays 45s, and it's stocked with amazing songs. So
That's
I happen
what
to
I
know that you're
heard.
going to have a great time.
So maybe some dancing
Okay.
will be going on as
Could
well.
happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Is it kid friendly?
We can take your contact information at this point.
Okay.
We know we weren't planning for children, but depending on ages, appreciate the question though.
Thanks, Sierra. Okay, now we'll bring up Michael Kraft from Papa and Barkley, so we can get an update from them. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you especially, Greg, for the invitation. I want to give a shout out to several city staff that I've seen in the building tonight that have been very helpful to us. Lane Millar, Swan Asbury, Rob Dumichel, Rob Homeland, who's not here, but who really was a spark, Captain Stevens, who helped us with a lot of stuff around security. And so we've felt very much supported by the city so far, and I'm here to give an update on where we are. So I'm Michael. I'm in the compliance department. I get paid to be a rules follower, which is a little bit odd in the cannabis industry, but it's changing, right? That's why you decided you wanted it here. So our mission is to unlock the power of cannabis to improve lives. We take that very seriously. You'll see that through here. We also want to be a big brand, a global brand with a continuing large presence here in Eureka. And we kind of have two origin stories. One is, that's Papa and Barkley there. So Papa was our founder's father. He was in hospice care with debilitating back pain. And he was told by the staff that if he didn't get out of bed within the next week or two, he never would, and he wasn't going to live that long. And Adam Grossman, our founder and CEO, called old connections of his, got a hold of some of the best cannabis he could, put it in a crock pot with coconut oil, and came up with the first balm that is really at the headwaters of our product line. But the second origin story that's more relevant here is, why are we in Eureka? And there's both business reasons for it. Eureka came out early compared to the rest of the state with clear regulation. Wasn't super simple regulation, but it was, you could follow it. You knew what you had to do. As often, there was no excise tax. That was important. As is often the case, there was a personal connection. Adam has a cousin who lives here, so he's familiar with the area. And not least, we're within 50 miles of the best cannabis in the world. And we buy all of our cannabis from Emerald Triangle farmers. We, in our belief in the power of the plant, we really believe that hemp and marijuana are one plant. Genetically, it's a poodle and a spaniel. So they have different expressions, but they are not different plants. They have different effectiveness. But our product line, which you can see there, on the left are what we sell in California dispensaries. On the right is what we sell in the national market online and through retailers. I'll say a little bit more about that. So we're really trying to get ready for a national presence. We're launching this national line in a big way in 2020. So let's get into the updates here. We've rehabbed a number of buildings. I had a friend from New York who said this sounds just like New York. Like you're on 2nd Street, 3rd Street, 4th Street, 5th Street, and Broadway. Sounds pretty familiar. So we have little facilities. We have one big facility. We have one medium big facility. But we put quite a bit of money and effort into taking some buildings that were either starting to degrade or had degraded quite a bit, and bringing them back. And a lot of the cannabis industry in the city limits has done that. Jobs, you always want to know about jobs, right? So we have 210 jobs, that's actually a misprint. We have 210 jobs throughout the company. Big 3 of those are outside of the state of California. But over half, by a little bit, 107, are here in Eureka. And that's up from nowhere in 2015, 2016. And if I had to guess where that's going to be, like this time next year, 130, 150 in town. Most of our workers here are production. And if you come to us as, you know, a young person just starting, you're probably going to start at $15 an hour. If you work pretty well, you'll be at $17 an hour by the end of the first year. We have a 401k plan. We have a good health care plan. Thank God we got big enough to get a good health care plan, because our small health care plan was not as good. State of insurance in the world. We've got other little perks that are kind of nice, but we really do want to take care of our people. I came to work from the company from the staffing agency. I saw what they were doing for people. It was an easy decision for me to make the jump. Economic impact in Humboldt County. This is the last 12 months, so most of these numbers will be higher the next 12 months. And I won't go through everything, but what you see is the big 3 there in the lighter blue is our raw cannabis purchasing. And what's interesting about this, it's both a pretty big number, $3.5 million, but it's also mostly spent on stuff that may well have been composted 8 years ago. We take trim, we do that infusion process that is just a higher tech version of the crock pot, and extract cannabis from it. Payroll and benefits, not quite $2.5 million over the last 2 months, right about $2.5 million for actual cash outlays for property. That's not the price tag on all those things. That's what we paid in the year. So we are a startup seeking to grow big. We're investing a lot of money. We're investing in people, we're investing in facilities, we're investing a lot in market share. We have built the top topicals brand in the state, and we're defending that. Half of the balms sold in the state of California's dispensaries are Pop and Barkley balms. About a third of the tinctures are Pop and Barkley tinctures. We're working hard to keep that going. But what that means is that we are burning cash all the time. We don't bring as much money in as we're paying out in various things. So we expect every year, to go to the capital markets and have investors infuse us, and we can show them growth, and we can show them the kind of customers we're getting, we can show them plans. And so that's worked. And, you know, if you think about it, Amazon wasn't profitable for decades. We're kind of like that. We're still taking money in while we grow this market both locally, nationally, and perhaps beyond. We talk a lot about being best in class, and so what that expresses itself as being, we're in a lot of dispensaries. We're shooting for 90% penetration in California dispensaries. We're almost there. As I mentioned, we're the #1 wellness cannabis brand with those topicals. 14-time industry award. That actually hasn't been updated. The 3 awards that my colleagues Boris and Guy are holding there are on top of that 14. So that was just a little bit ago. So we are really trying to be good at this. We're also trying to be really good at who we hire. So just a couple of examples. These are our most recent executive hires. Angela P. did all kinds of stuff at the senior marketing level, like she was the Tylenol brand manager in China. Joe, our new human resources person, has both been with Sears in senior VP roles, but also with a cool brand like Barney's of New York. Angela has worked with the Honest Company and Casamigos. Those are both celebrity-driven brands. So we're tapping into some of that. We just had Lady Gaga accidentally on Halloween tweet out a picture of 3 pumpkins and a bottle of Papa and Barkley tinctures. capsules. And of course, we jumped on that. We said, I think that's, and we blow it up, and yeah, right there on her shelf. So back to the real world of making stuff. This is what our manufacturing evolution looks like. Last year, the year before, first couple of years, we did a lot of filling by hand with cake fillers. That's what that little white thing is. We started testing automation last year. So the little shop on 5th Street, the code shop, we had a small tincture line, we had a small capsule line, we had a small transdermal patch line. We started taking those to scale this year at our 2nd Street location. And then next year, we get a lot bigger with that in Broadway, the former Kmart building. And what really makes me proud, as we've implemented automation, we've paused in hiring, we have not laid a single person off. We redeployed some folks, and then within a couple of months, we were hiring again. So at a high level, this is where we are at the Kmart. That's something people are pretty interested in. So at this point, we've got maybe 10% of that facility in operation with manufacturing and distribution. When it's built, that big blue area there will be the manufacturing area. The kind of tan area will be distribution. We've got this little retail piece down there, which is the old, if you can see where Highway 101 is, the retail space is the old garden room, the old plant nursery spot for those of you who were customers. We are leaning heavily into good manufacturing processes, and that's actually a specific thing. It's an international standard. It's what the FDA is going to look for if they start regulating this industry and people are putting tinctures and edibles into their bodies. So that's going to be a kind of standard of manufacturing that'll be very high for Humboldt County. And it also, there's a couple of things there. You might notice, why do you have a basketball at the top left of this? That's to remind me to point out, there's a little basketball court drawn in the upper right there to give you a sense of scale. So like the two lines that are in blue are almost the size of a basketball court. This is pretty complicated stuff, but it also shows you we actually know or have a pretty good idea how we're going to fill this space. I did say retail. We don't want to be a dispensary chain. We do want to sell directly to customers at events, you know, super consumers who go to High Times and those sorts of events. We have some pretty good thoughts around a few select direct-to-consumer things that go with our wellness category. And once in a while, we'll throw a party in there. I also think that in that retail area, the way we've drawn this out, it actually sets up pretty nicely for industry tours. You will have to suit up if you come to visit us when this is built. But we'll be able to run people around there. And if you think about if we collaborate with Lost Coast Brewery or Dick Taylor Chocolates where they're going to have some pretty cool industry tourism, we think that's a place where we might play a small role. Press and publicity tours, we pay journalists to come here and take a look, or we at least pay their expenses. We take them out to a farm. This is actually Jillian Krall. She's one of our production managers. But we as employees got the same experience 2 days later that the press got. So we did some things in Old Town. We went out to a farm around Willow Creek. We had a dinner. And that's an experience that is replicable. Maybe Papa and Barkley plays a role in that, maybe we don't. Even if none of that happens, we're bringing people in for 500 or 600 hotel stays a year. There's a little over 500 this year. We're thinking 600, 700 next year. National rollout. So we have that CBD line that I mentioned to you. This is both a yeasty big market itself, but in addition to that, all that infrastructure we're building, the relationships out there, the online platforms, the sales representatives, all of that transfers to national legalization should it come. We really want to be well positioned. We'd like it to wait a few years. It's kind of nice to be protected in California right now, but should it come, we expect that we'll be at least somewhat ahead of the pack. These are some of the brands of retailers, both online and storefront, that we're working with in that national line. So like, I've ordered things from Swanson, everybody's ordered from Amazon. The Vitamin Shop is a very interesting company. And that, you know, it is a current thing. This was Bernie standards about 3 days ago. So we want to be ready. This whole industry needs to be ready for what happens with national legalization. So what do we want from you? We've come a long ways, and we still want you to be patient. There's new rules coming out all the time. We're making mistakes as well as doing things successfully, so be patient with us. As you did with us, we'd love to see the city of Eureka continue to support the industry. We don't mind if you recruit more manufacturers in our business. We think that's a great thing for the county. It would be a favor to us to have a large, really good testing lab, so if you can get on that. And if there was one magic wand that I could wave, we don't see this up here, so you don't think about it, but there are about 3,000 unlicensed dispensaries in the state of California. We don't sell to them. We only sell to the 500-600 that are licensed. So the more that can happen to both incent them to go legal, to stamp out the ones that won't, that makes the pie bigger for everybody who is licensed and selling into the legal dispensaries. So that's what we think the future looks like. We really appreciate your help. I know you've got a long meeting tonight. If you have questions, love to answer them, but I can also just walk away.
Thank you, Michael. Do we have any questions from council?
All right, thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure watching you grow. It's really a phenomenal thing.
It's quite a ride.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Moving on to public comment. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on matters that do not appear on the agenda. City Council policy is to limit each speaker to 3 minutes. Those members of the public who have completed a speaker card will be called in the order the cards were received. The public will be allowed to speak concurrently with the calling of an agenda item following the staff presentation of that item. And pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear on the agenda. So, Pam, do you have the cards?
First up is Cornelius Lowenstein, and then Cindy Boeing.
Good evening. A regular pleasure by now. Deaf, dumb, numb, and blind, that's how you present yourself over and over again to us, the citizens. Marie Antoinette-style hubris at the finest, or Bergelian deflectic, as I call it by now. The scope of the vandalism, theft, open drug consumption is appalling to locals and potential visitors alike. The dwindling tourism numbers in old and downtown speak a clear message. You are agenda-driven, aka hell-bent, to be on the forefront of the new California, and its hallmark seem to be needle litter, crime, homeless encampments, and all the environmental, social, and economic consequences that come in the wake of the opiate epidemic. Today, November 5th, marks the 30th anniversary of the largest peaceful demonstration in my and Alexander von Humboldt's hometown and home country, Berlin, Germany. And 5 days later, we the people made the wall fall. Your wall of denial has to fall, and you need to be held accountable and will be held accountable to transparency, accountability, and responsibility. Look at the arson, look at the vandalism, look at the death, decay, and destruction on our streets. Death, decay, and destruction are the fruits of harm reduction as administered by the enabling, facilitating entities like Hatcher. Or Kim Bergel's new favorite political pet, Aegis, the methadone dispensary you're shoving down our throats. Ask yourself, would you take your nice family vacation in Eureka in its current state, including Fold Town, the library, or the already infamous Harakiri Trail? Time to put Eureka first and make Eureka safe again, I'd say. I'm still awaiting a proclamation condemning the vandalism and violence, the slander and terrorist threats from the supporters of the Needle Exchange and other far-left members of the community. You, as our leaders, should take a strong stance against political intimidation of any form by anyone. Think the smashed-in windows of the GOP office or attacks against 2 Street Music, for example. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Cornelius.
Cindy, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. Bugenig?
Hold on just a minute, I'm sorry. I'm bringing it down. You could probably pull it down towards your, there you go, perfect.
I wanted to take this time to express my dissatisfaction of Eddie Alexander's recent survey of local citizens concerning the marketing of Eureka. First of all, I disagree with the headlines stating that Eureka has low self-esteem. We do not have low self-esteem. We have disgust of what has happened to this beautiful seaport city. Why should the citizens of Eureka have to accept addicts, needle litter, out-of-control crime, and the constant cleanup of addict camps endangering our green belts, beaches, and parks? Why are we supposed to accept this as normal behavior? It isn't. Eddie Alexander stated that this is not necessarily a detraction for tourists. I beg to differ. What planet does Eddie Alexander live on? Speaking for my tenants in downtown, I can emphatically state that it is a deal breaker. Addicts are wandering the streets, threatening customers, defecating and urinating in front of their businesses, and doing property damage to their stores. I have painted one store 5 times, another store had their plate glass windows kicked in, and yet another, run by a single lady, was graffitied with, "I'm going to kill you," after asking him to leave her alcove. Why do we have to be subject to this? Since the welcoming of Hatcher to this community, approximately 3 years ago, Eureka has become just another pass-through city, just like San Francisco, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. When I go to a new destination to visit and shop, I don't want to be confronted by someone high or mentally ill. The addicts have destroyed Old Town, Downtown, and Broadway businesses and are stealing from the Eureka residents to support their habit. This has to stop. Why can't we work together, the council and the public, to come up with a solution to these problems? We elected you as our representatives. We are available anytime to be part of a committee for ideas. Why can't Eureka be the model for the rest of California to look at and say, wow, they worked so hard and came up with some solutions to the homeless addict problems? Month after month, there is nothing on the agenda that addresses these problems. I would hate to be remembered as a council member that did nothing to save my city.
Thank you, Cindy.
Next up, we have Joel Ziegler, followed by Joaquin Dominic, and then Rich Ames.
I'll also pass it till the agenda item comes up for cell tower, the water tower.
Caroline Griffith.
Hello, thank you. My name is Caroline Griffith. I am a resident of Eureka. I didn't sign up to speak because I wasn't going to on this, and then, as happens frequently, I was inspired by what the people ahead of me had to say. I was, 2 nights ago, my home was broken into, and I had a lot of things that were very personal and valuable stolen. And so I was really happy to come here tonight and to hear a presentation from Waterfront Recovery Center, and to hear that the city actually is doing a lot of things to proactively deal with the issues that lead to a lot of property crime. Crime doesn't just come out of nowhere. There are all these social factors that lead to it, and a lot of that is addiction and mental illness. And I was really, 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 really angry to come home and see that my house had been broken into. And I wanted to get like really reactionary and smash things. And then I started to think about who possibly it could have been that broke into my home. And I think in a lot of cases it is people who are suffering from addiction. So thank you for supporting places like Waterfront Recovery Services. And also I would really appreciate if you could continue to do whatever you can as a city council to recruit other entities that do work like that. And I think that helping to deal with addiction in science-based, fact-based methodologies like methadone clinics would be really great. So thank you for all that you are doing. And also the EPD showed up to my house so fast when I called them. So thanks.
Thanks, Caroline. No more comment cards? Okay, no more comment cards. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come forward? Oh, excuse me. Come on up, Rich. He had a comment card.
Hi, my name is Rich Ames. I'm a citizen of Eureka. I'd like to give you full disclosure. I'm on the Eureka Planning Commission. I was one of the commissioners who voted against the Verizon.
Excuse me, Rich, we are going to be having a public hearing about the Verizon that you will be able to public comment on. This is for items that are not on the agenda?
This is not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay. I just want to put into your minds coming up on the 19th, you're going to have a meeting on Verizon. And I'd like to just tell you that I think that the contract that we entered into with Verizon is just a terrible contract for the city of Eureka. The amount of money they're charging is $1,100 a month, which is way under the market. The market should be $4,000 to $6,000 a month. I think that the staff did not do their research on the amount of money that the market could bear for these towers. When Verizon came to Eureka, I think that the staff should have said, good idea, we like Verizon, Verizon's a great company. Let's put it out for bids, or let's hire a consultant that a consultant will do his research and come up with a fair price for the tower. This is a one-way contract. This is a terrible contract, terrible. A one-way contract means that the city of Eureka, you guys, cannot get out of this contract. Verizon can get out anytime they want, but this is a one-way contract. If we don't like what Verizon does, tough. This is also not just a 1 year, 5 year contract. Because it's a one-way contract, it means there's 2 additional 25-year contracts. This is a 55-year contract that Eureka cannot get out of. Verizon can, we can't. In short, I'd like to say, in closing, I'd like to say, and I also think that you're going to be faced next meeting with the department head who signed off on this, did not have the authority to sign off on a contract this large. And they get around that by saying it's a 5-year contract, but it's not. It's a 55-year contract.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, all the comment cards have been completed. Would you like to come forward? Thank you. Thanks for being flexible.
I'm a nurse, I have to be flexible. Anyway, I'm Bonnie, and I know I've come up here every month practically. Same issue, though, with the work on the park. It's been good, Claire Mayberry Park, but it's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that area. It's still a center point for the kind of activity that the park was basically the nexus for. We have the library there, and then we have the needle exchange, and I am positioned exactly between the two of them. But they're aspects of the neighborhood other than that that just make it attractive for individuals that are looking to work outside of the guidelines of normal society. And one of them, I noticed there's no street lights. All around the Carson Mansion, there's tons of street lights, and then they just abruptly stop when they come to that corner, I think on Myrtle and 3rd or something like that. If it was lit up like Christmas, I mean, roaches do not like the dark, and people in that mentality do not either. Also, the streets look like nobody cares about them. You cannot drive a car down O Street towards 4th. It will swallow my Volkswagen. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that, you know, if the neighborhood looks like nobody cares about it, then you're going to attract a population that doesn't care about anything. And you know, if the streets were maintained, if it was well lighted, that this population does not want to be in an area that is cared for. They are, you know, like I said, outside of, you know, the normal boundaries of society. They have a different code of ethics, if they have any at all. So I'm just imploring to get more lighting on that neighborhood. They should be. I understand that if the street light is on the corner, it's the city property. If it's in the middle of the block, it's private property. But there are many corners along 3rd Street that do not have street lights. I don't know if that's right or not. Somebody said that. But anyway, I look at the neighborhoods that are definitely maintained, and they are well lit. There's a street light every 10, 15 feet or whatever. You can walk down almost the entire length of 3rd Street down to the Samoa Bridge, and there is nothing. So we've come a long way with that neighborhood, but they still going to come there. We have a long way to go of chasing off a bunch of activity tonight before I came. I'd like to see some more work done. I'm paying taxes up here, you know. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. So is there anyone else from the public that would like to comment? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move forward to our public hearing. So our public hearing is speaking to the Verizon Wireless Telecommunications Facility Appeal. Could we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you this evening is the appeal of the Verizon Wireless Telecommunication Facility, also known as a WTF. The project site is at 1020 Wood Street. The parcel number is there for you to look at. The property is zoned public, and the land use designation is public, quasi-public. Eureka Municipal Code Chapter 159 provides the regulations for WTF, along with regulations imposed by the Federal Communications Commission. The site is located at the water tower, kind of in the center of the city. Zooming in a little closer here on Harris Street, we are just east of Henderson Center. The Boys and Girls Club is on the west side of the property. And zooming in a little closer, we have the high tank itself. We have a low tank, pump houses, Humboldt Bay Fire's classroom facility, and the parking area for that. So this is looking at the site from the south and looking south from the north. The project proposes to install 8 panel antennas and 12 remote radio heads on the city's 130-foot high water tower. There'll also be an equipment and parking area on the ground, and a use permit and for the wireless telecommunication facility and design review are required. The antennas will be on the water tower itself.
The equipment area will be on the ground, and there will be a driveway to get to that equipment area. Verizon analyzed 4 sites before they chose this particular location. And one of the objectives of the Eureka Municipal Code is to maximize the use of existing wireless telecommunication towers and alternative structures to minimize both the need to construct new towers and the total number of towers throughout the city. In this case, using the existing water tower means that there was no new wireless tower that has to be built. On September 24th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing, and following public testimony, found that the facility was not compatible with the character and aesthetics of the neighborhood, and that the facility would be detrimental to the public health. Verizon appealed and stated that the denial was a violation of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and that the findings were not supported by substantial evidence in the record. And the generalized concerns regarding aesthetics and the bare conclusions about a detriment to public health and safety were not supported by the record. In regard to aesthetics, the equipment will be mounted on the existing tower. It will be painted to match the legs of the tower. And just to give you an idea of what it will look like, we have some photo simulations, the existing tower here. And the Verizon installation is shown in this photo sim, and just to ID for you where those are. And then if we zoom in a lot onto the site, the photo simulation has the locations there just on 4 of the tower legs. And a couple of other views from various locations around the neighborhood. The antenna is going to be mounted approximately 87 feet above the ground, and the equipment area will be surrounded by a chain link fence with brown slats, looking like that. 2 conditions of approval are recommended that pertain to aesthetics. And as far as health and safety, the applicant is required to provide a health report identifying the maximum electromagnetic and radio frequency radiation to be emitted by the facility. That report also has to indicate whether it conforms with the safety standards adopted by the FCC. The report provided by the applicant shows that at ground level, there is no anticipated exposure. At the catwalk, which is above the level of where the panel antennas will be at 102 feet above the ground, individuals can safely occupy the area in green for an indefinite amount of time. And just to kind of give you an idea of where that is on the tower in relation to the ground, got an approximation there for you. In front of the panels, beginning at 87 feet above the ground, the exposure level is calculated to be between 5% and 100% below the FCC's permissible exposure limits, and access should be limited to RF trained personnel. And again, there's a kind of approximation of where that area is based on the public health report. So conditions pertaining to public health and safety include installation of warning signs at access points. And then Verizon requested that a condition be added to the project that they prepare a post-construction RF evaluation, and a copy of that report be provided to the City of Eureka for the public to review. And finally, the city's standard inadvertent discovery language is included also. So staff recommends that you hold a public hearing this evening. You limit comments to planning issues related to the appeal, and you adopt a resolution to overturn the decision of the Planning Commission to deny the proposed WTF and uphold the appeal. And there is a suggested motion for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Thank you, Kristen. Do we have any questions from council this time? Councilmember Arroyo?
So when we've talked about this before, I think I understood pretty clearly, but just to reiterate, we the FCC precludes us from opposing its installation based on health concerns that are, is that correct?
It is
Could you
correct.
clarify?
A denial based on the RF emissions is not allowed by the FCC regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Allison?
That's a question for Bob Black. So this public hearing is not about the lease agreement that's proposed between Verizon and the city. It's just overturning and confirming the appeal for this, right?
That is correct. You either affirm or overturn the appeal based on the planning considerations that Ms. Getz has presented to you. On the 19th of this month, the lease itself will be back on your agenda because city attorney's interpretation is that the lease is of a magnitude, financial magnitude, that it requires city council approval as opposed to staff approval.
Thank you.
Councilmember Arroyo?
So in looking at the staff report and in past conversations about this, it seems like there were a few noticing irregularities. Could you briefly summarize those just so the public's aware of what that consisted of and how those were handled?
Sure. Chapter 159 of the Municipal Code requires that there be an educational meeting conducted by the applicant. It requires that the applicant provide notice to property owners within 500 feet of the site and hold a meeting at some public location. The applicant did send the notice to property owners within 500 feet. However, the city had volunteered, because they are out of the area, to put up the signs, and unfortunately the signs were not installed regarding the public meeting. Then the noticing for the Planning Commission public hearing was sent to a 300-foot radius instead of the required 500-foot radius. So to remedy both of those errors, the applicants re-noticed and re-held a public education meeting. And the city staff re-noticed the Planning Commission meeting and held that again on September 24th.
So all of those irregularities were resolved through redoing it all, essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and I think that's all I had in the question realm. I mean, obviously I've read the backstory. I'm just, I know there's there's been a lot of interest in this issue, and so I just wanted to ask some clarifying questions. Thank you.
Okay. So, nope. So, now we are going to be opening you can ask your question during public comment. Okay, so at this time I will open the public hearing. Before I do that, I do want to remind everybody that the request for comments at this public hearing will be limited to the planning issues raised by the appeal. The lease for space on the city's tower at 1020 Wood Street is planned to be before the council on November 19th. Overturn the decision of the Planning Commission to deny the proposed wireless telecommunication facility at 1020 Wood Street and uphold the appeal. So that's what we're talking about tonight. We're not talking about any lease agreements during this public comment. I just want to be very clear. Okay, so
Madam Mayor, can I ask I just wanted to make a point of order clarification that if people do have questions during public comment, we're not going to do a back and forth, but
No.
we can ask them to be answered after the public comment.
Yes.
So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you, Councilmember Arroyo. Okay, so at this time, we will open the public hearing. Would anyone like to address the council regarding this item? Oh, come on up.
My name is Mark Lobaugh. I'm with Epic Wireless. I'm a site acquisition consultant employed by Verizon Wireless to represent them in this matter.
I put together the application submittal package and, worked with staff to make sure that our project was designed in conformance with all zoning regulations. I know that you were provided a letter by McKenzie and Albritton LLP. That's the attorney representing Verizon Wireless. I'm just going to briefly summarize some of the main topics that they made. Basically, the project is, it's important to keep it in perspective with what we're talking about here. We're talking about 8 antennas and related electronic equipment hung on an existing 134-foot tall water tank that's already used as a communication site. Already communications equipment on the site, so it's a co-location on an existing facility. As was articulated by staff, we're going to paint the antennas white. They clearly do not represent a significant impact on the visual impact of that site. Ground equipment will be enclosed within a slatted chain link fence enclosure. Three equipment cabinets, roughly the size of small refrigerators, within this facility that will contain batteries that will back up communications should the power go out. We all know that power outages are a major concern. I just went through one. I live in Placerville, California. Just went through a week of them up there, and I was happy to share the fact that my cell phones continue to work because we had adequate capacity and a facility, a network that's been designed to get us over these power outages. So these sites are important. These facilities serve a very, very key communication, backup to traditional landlines. Folks are only using, I think there's a statistic now that says that 50% of households are not even using traditional landlines anymore, and they rely on their cell phones for their communications. I think the Planning Commission, when they reviewed our application, we went through 2 hearings, I think they really missed it here. I think they overstepped their authority. The focus seemed to be the lease terms. We spent a lot of time trying to, the commissioners trying to renegotiate a lease that was already duly negotiated, reviewed, signed, went through all the correct legal, methods to get a lease signed, and I think they just screwed up here when they denied us based on, they used the aesthetics and other points made, but really it seemed that they were preoccupied with the lease. So I know we're going to revisit that on the 18th, and I'd be happy to come back on the 18th and discuss those items. 19th. So I'm going to leave here. I'm going to end my discussion here that I implore you to help us improve both coverage and capacity. This is a very important site, and I've also got members of the Verizon team in the audience, radio frequency engineer, also DTEC, the gentleman that put together the radio frequency report. Can answer questions if you have any questions regarding that. These sites are heavily tested. This site will comply with all FCC regulations, and it's well below any allowable emissions. And he's the expert to discuss that, but he's in the audience and available to answer your questions. So, do you have any questions of me in terms of the applicant?
Councilmember Arroyo?
So this is a lot of information. I apologize if I missed this, but I know that the study that was done said that the impact of the pre-existing infrastructure was negligible, and therefore wouldn't. It was determined to be negligible when looking at the radio frequency emissions, that most of the emissions would come from this project, not from the pre-existing telecommunications.
I'm not an authority on that matter. I would refer you to our consultant in the audience, and if you'd like, I can have him come up and address that now or later.
That would be helpful. Yeah, I'd like to
Okay.
understand kind of what the sum of all those parts are.
Sure. Good evening, council members. My name is Durang Tech. I'm an engineer. My company has been hired by Verizon to conduct an
RF study of their site. And a little bit about my background. I'm a licensed professional engineer for over 20 years. Our company's been providing RF safety services for, like I said, over 20 years, and that's all we do, RF safety analysis. And when we do these, we get a lot of drawings. We get RFDS, which is the RF data sheets that shows you all the RF specifications. And very rarely we get a site that is 87 feet tall on a water tank, and that means it's very ideal for RF exposure on the ground. So it's very, very low, where the exposure is predicted to be 0.5%. That's half of a percent. Or in other words, it means it's 200 times below the FCC safety limits. And as far as RF emissions from nearby telecommunication sites that are 2,000 feet away, it is negligible compared to the area surrounding Verizon's and the telecommunications antennas on the top of the tank. So that's what's going to produce the most, is where the Verizon is. But even so, with Verizon's prediction or emission levels that we predict to be, it is very, very, very comparable to, in fact, very low compared to appliances around your homes. For example, a toaster or a microwave oven, for example. It is it's very, very low compared to that. So as far as FCC compliance, there's no question as it is in compliance with FCC safety requirements here.
So there's already existing telecommunications infrastructure on the tower already, right?
Yes, on the top, there's
On the
antennas,
top.
yeah.
And so that, the amount coming from that is
The amount coming from that is included in the report.
Okay.
But as far as others that are 2,000 feet away,
Okay.
it's too far.
That's what I wasn't understanding. Okay, so the amount from that tower is added to
It's
what the
added.
Verizon infrastructure would produce.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just wanted to add that, we did 2 public outreaches. I think there's less than 10 people showed up for the first outreach. The second one, I think we had 4 people show up. Of the 4, I think we convinced one woman who came looking for information. I think by the time she left, she was supporting the project. You're probably going to hear from 1 or 2 of those folks that attended the hearing. During the course of that hearing, in our meeting with these 2 gentlemen that are here, we discussed safety, and it's important that we do, that's the point of an outreach, is to describe what we're doing, why we're doing it, what are the potential effects. And during the course of that, we came up with a solution of adding an additional condition of approval to further prove that the site will operate within FCC requirements. And we've agreed to do a post-construction RF study. So just to further document, we didn't need to do that, but just to further document that once the site is constructed, there's not going to be anyone sort of turning up the switch and somehow broadcasting above FCC requirements. It's not going to happen. So I just wanted to further, give you that assurance that we're going above and beyond the call of duty here, in my opinion. So I hope that you'll see it our way and see to it that we can get this project approved and start improving communications for folks in the area. And we'll be available for further questions and comments. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the public hearing is open. Do we have anybody? Come on up, Rich.
My name is Rich Ames, Eureka, California. Mr. Black, I missed what you said at the very last, when you said the department heads didn't have the authority to sign this, and that's why you're bringing it to the council on the 19th.
I did say that.
You did say that.
Yes.
So if we have a contract already signed by a department head,
So Rich, we're not going to have a debate here.
okay.
What we're talking about
Okay,
now
I was
is
asking
land.
questions.
Well, you can ask your questions and we can get them answered for you, but we're not going to have a back and forth debate. This is about land use. This is not
Right,
about
okay, thank you.
the lease.
I would say that, could I ask the councilman questions?
We can get the answer for you, but we're not going to just banter back and forth with you. That's not how it happens here.
I can ask the questions
You
to
can
the
ask the
councilman.
question, but you won't get your answers right away.
Leslie, could you tell me,
No, not direct. You can ask us questions and we can get the answers for you after.
no, okay,
We're not
thank
going to
you.
answer questions during public comment.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you for your time.
you're welcome.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks for
Mr.
being
Black.
here. You can contact any one of us individually if you'd like. Yeah, I said you can contact any of us individually if you'd like, or you can talk with Ms. Getz about your questions. Thank you. Right. Come on up, Joaquin.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing this matter. I don't agree with the gentleman for Verizon. I don't think that the coverage is essential. If you look at their coverage map, most of the area that they're looking to improve coverage in is in Myrtletown. And also, one of the, I think someone from T-Tech said that they're building this project they're anticipating 10 years out. They expect that there'd be a lot of high data gaming in 10 years, and so they're thinking about the future. But currently, there's no real gap in data, so this is not an essential project. Towers are usually located in industrial areas where co-location kind of makes sense if they want to add more. And if they're granted this permit, they can add additional equipment without the city, without it going through design review. Essentially, they have to just get a permit, essentially. So if they're granted the site, there's no way to really kind of curtail the expansion of more equipment on the tower, and it's already quite a busy area. We already have a block away the 4 cell towers, right, at Wood and J at the Hebrew Christian Church. And I believe the city ordinance requires the cumulative analysis of all existing sites within 2,000 feet. I don't believe that was in the initial report, and I think that I've been told that, at least by Verizon. So they didn't provide that. There are already antennae on top of the water tower, but I ask you that should our neighborhood have to bear the aesthetic burden of one more project? This is a busy site, like I said. And also, the city attorney has said that like I said earlier, that the city's hands will be tied, meaning you won't be able to prevent any more or to stop any more addition of equipment. As long as it falls within FCC safety, they can add as much equipment as they want on site. And it won't be subject to design review. I think it's just aesthetically displeasing. We kind of joke around about living at the top of Eureka and having really good water pressure right there. We're a block away from the water tank. And it's a historic, iconic landmark. So that's something that also should be considered here. The fact that it appears that the lease was signed preemptively before public comment is a little dubious, and I think that should be considered as well. And I hope that you overturn the appeal, Verizon's appeal on this matter. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Joaquin. Good evening. I'm Joel Ziegler. I was born in Eureka
next month will mark 72 years ago. The water tower I consider to be one of Eureka's landmarks. It can be seen from the air, it can be seen from the peninsula. It stands out as you come across the highway from Samoa. It is one that needs to be limited to accoutrements such as antennas. Now, if you look at the professional building, like from Paul's Live in New York, you sit in a corner window there and look at the professional building. It has 3 likely painted similar antenna configurations on it. No one could tell me that they are aesthetically pleasing, because at the front of the building, the architects put a cornice on the building that wraps around but does not extend over to where these these installations are. If one looks across from the courthouse behind the gas station on 4th Street, you'll see what William Van Fleet did when he had similar metal panels to ameliorate or make less aesthetically shocking. And it is probably the first of the murals in Eureka. He put up a passive solar collector behind glass, and instead of painting it just tan, he painted a mural on it of egrets in the mudflats. That is mitigation. Painting it brick red on the professional building is not mitigation. Painting it the blue of the tower or the pale of the tower legs is not mitigation. The physical appearance of the towers will be altered forever, and it will continue with an open door toward that. Also, it appears that the city was not legally entitled to enter into this contract. So there is no contract under the law, and the city is needing a presentation for a legal avenue to grant any kind of effort.
Thank you, Joel. We appreciate your comments. Did you want to grab your notebook? No? Okay. Good evening. I'm Sandra Gribby, and also known as Sandra Mance. Around the late 70s or early 80s, the Sutro Tower was built on the hills surrounding San Francisco, and I was working for a planning consultant who traveled a lot to drum up business for the firm. And he left a New Yorker in the office, and I picked it up and glanced through it, and there was a long article in there about cell phone towers. And the Sutro Tower was already built and functioning. And it said that a lot of the approvals happened because the description of the environmental effects lists the emissions, or what do they call them, the rays from the cell phone towers, as being very low. And the article pointed out that in the range from low to high, there are windows where there are no rays, and there are windows where there are high rays. And so it doesn't really have to do with that. It has to do with which rays resonate with your DNA. And the reason they were studying the Sutro Tower was because there had been a lot of births and young children getting leukemia on the slope below the Sutro Tower. Anyway, I kind of forgot about it for a while and went on. And eventually I was working in the City of Berkeley in the early 90s.
and this issue of cell phone towers came up, and we had a proliferation of applications for cell phone towers in Berkeley, and everyone panicked because it said that they could not be turned down because the federal government had decided they were harmless. And so I worked in the same office as the woman who wrote the ordinance. We discussed it with the whole department and found that there was a loophole because the federal government's restrictions say that they can be turned down for aesthetic reasons. So in every case, we pointed out what the aesthetic reasons why it would be objectable was that the towers that were being located in residential areas were way out of scale and character with the residential neighborhoods. And they were successful in stopping all of these ones that were proposed in those areas, and they ended up putting them in industrial or commercial areas.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Sandra.
to make a long story short,
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Okay, would anybody else like to comment on this issue?
Hi, Caroline Griffith. I live within the noticing area around the water tower, and I did get my notice in the mail, but I think that any time that you have a public meeting and only 4 people show up, you should really be reflecting on what you did wrong. Maybe the time of day of the meeting wasn't good. Perhaps it was at a time where people who have children couldn't attend. I know planning commission meetings happen at 3:30 in the afternoon. Is that right? But anyway, they happen at a time where it's difficult to get to these meetings. So I think that first of all, even if the city has met its noticing requirements, I think that we can do a lot better in terms of outreach to actually get people to meetings so they can actually have their voices heard before it gets to the point where folks are just coming to complain. And in terms of aesthetics, so I live close enough to the water tower that during the power outages, I was kept up all night long by the sound of the generators that run the water tower, not even thinking about how, I guess it hadn't occurred to me how much power is required to keep everything circulating there. And this may be, like, bear with me in this aesthetic argument. I think that usually people think about visual aesthetics, but the noise aesthetics as well. And so I think that if these towers take the place of some other sort of power generating measure that could be silent, that could not affect the aesthetics of my neighborhood the way that generators do, then you should deny this appeal, because there are other things that we could be using that water tower for that will directly impact Eurekans. We don't need to lease space to make money so that we have money to buy a service. Right? We can just cut out the middleman. And then by doing that, we can affect the aesthetics of the neighborhood positively by not having to listen to a grinding generator sound all night long when the power goes out, which it undoubtedly will again. So thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. We have one more person coming up in public comment.
Kyra Kelly, Eureka, and I wanted to point out that the water tower is definitely a historical kind of like landmark locally. I think so. I grew up here. I always kind of like it. And when I came back from LA, I was like, oh, the water tower. So it kind of like does hold some kind of like sentimental ness to it. And then I also wanted to wonder if anybody looked into whether or not the water itself could be negatively impacted by the installation or the presence of these cell towers. I was doing some research while I was waiting, and it says something about distances and things like that, 45 miles being safe, and it's sending out microwave waves, which I know are not good for pregnant people. So I don't know how the health research is really being looked at. And then also if there's a negative environmental impact, like on migratory birds. We have a lot of migratory birds through here. I'm wondering if that's being taken into consideration, and are we really making enough money in the end? Because I was doing some more research on here, and they're saying like some cities, there's like $4.5 billion being paid annually by these cell phone companies, and $45,000 a year and up. So I'm wondering, how much are we really getting out of it for the negative downside? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Holly Klingel. Eureka High 1960, Humboldt State 1966. I am so tired of people who disregard science in favor of emotion. We're all of a sudden now worried about sea level rise when science, real actual science, not some orange-haired politician who doesn't know shit from Shinola, talks about it. We need to listen to the science that is based on this. And I, for one, was extremely inconvenienced by the blackout. And now we understand we're going to have a series of blackouts, because it's windy. We need to listen to real science, not emotion. Thank you. Thank you, Holly. One moment. She's gonna go. I'm sorry, you already spoke on this subject. Yeah. We appreciate your comments. Okay, is there anyone else here that would like to comment on this? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to council for comments or questions. We do have the applicant that would like to make a few comments, and I'm gonna, what's the point of order with that? Is that fine?
I think, can we ask for them to come up and answer questions? Does
Go
that
ahead.
seem okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'd rather just have our discussion and then ask for additional information as we need it. I was just going to comment that there is no proposal in here for a generator for backup. It's electric or a battery backup for this facility. Not that has nothing to do with the generator for the water tank, but that was just the only thing that I wanted to add at this point.
Thank you. Councilmember Allison.
So, seems the biggest substance of this item here is aesthetics. And I was wondering, Kristen Getz, if you could go back to the beginning of your presentation where you talked about how sort of the goal of using existing structures is to eliminate the construction of new ones. Could you talk a little bit more about that and why an existing structure might be a better reason to build on than construct, say, a tower a few hundred feet away?
So, yeah, it's one of the objectives of Chapter 159, which is the wireless telecommunication facility ordinance for the city of Eureka. And one of the goals of that chapter is to utilize, when possible, existing structures as opposed to building new cell towers. Verizon, I suppose, could have come to us and said, hey, we want to build a new cell tower on the property, and we could have gone through that process. Instead, they recognized the fact that the water tower itself was already existing, and that provided in their opinion, a good base for the panel antennas, and so that was what their proposal was.
So just seems to me, speaking rhetorically, that using existing structure has less of an impact on aesthetics than building a completely new structure somewhere else.
Comments?
The existing antennas on top, or the antennas on top in these diagrams are already there, right? They're proposing stuff on the side.
They are, yes. They're City of Eureka antennas.
They're like suitcases strapped to the sides painted white is what they look like to me in these pictures. Am I
More or
very-
less, yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Castellano?
Planner Getz, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about just the reasons why the Planning Commission originally denied the proposal. This is the first time since I've been on council, I believe, that we're kind of going against a decision made by the Planning Commission, so it would just be useful for me to kind of hear more of that background.
So the discussion at the Planning Commission was not entirely clear in staff's opinion. It made it a little bit difficult for us to make the determination on what they were basing their decision on. There were findings that they did adopt, and I think those are included in your staff report, and I've alluded to them in the presentation tonight. So their issues that they found were with aesthetics, that it didn't fit with the character of the neighborhood. And then they did make a finding about public health and safety, but again, staff is not entirely clear on which aspect of the project they were concerned would be a detriment to the public health and safety.
Okay. Do we have any further comments? Councilmember Allison?
Yeah, so it appears to me that, we're going to talk about the lease agreement on the 19th council meeting, so I have a lot of comments about that then, but today we're only talking about, going against the Planning Commission's recommendation, and it appears to me that using an existing structure has a far less impact on aesthetics than building a new one. And I think that's really important to think about. Some people in the audience had the opinion that perhaps this project is not necessary at this time, but I feel like personally that communication is extremely necessary in today's world, and future proofing and making investments in our communication infrastructure here in Humboldt is extremely important because we don't have the best infrastructure here. So personally, I'm fine with moving with the staff recommendation that we should overturn the decision of the Planning Commission and uphold the appeal. Should I go ahead and make a motion, or would anyone else like to discuss at this
You
time?
can make a motion.
Okay.
We get a second?
I'll move the City Council adopt a resolution to uphold the appeal and overturn the decision of the Planning Commission to deny the proposed wireless telecommunication facility at 1020 Wood Street, APN 011-182-001.
Is there a second?
I just have something to say.
We need to have the motion either pass or fail before we have any more comments. Seconded. Yes, we need it seconded before we discuss it.
Yeah, but you did that, right?
No?
Oh.
Can I second it? Oh, I second. Councilmember Castellano.
Sorry, didn't mean to add to any confusion. Let's see. Generally, at this point in the process, I, support moving forward. I feel like that's really the question at hand today. I do want to say that something, I feel like the city should consider carefully is just what role we play in a corporation basically, engaging with the city and securing future financial advantages for themselves, and how, what's our responsibility, and how do we, as a city, address that to make sure that if that is indeed what's happening, that's fair for the people of Eureka, who will be, probably in the future paying money to Verizon to secure the advantages that are being sought after today.
Councilmember Arroyo?
I just want to voice my appreciation for those who participated in the public meetings. There might have only been a handful of participants, but I think it's really important that people did come out and voice their concerns about this project. And I felt like maybe downplaying, like, oh, there were just a few people that came and a couple of them are here tonight. Well, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being here through this whole process. That is exactly the intent of public outreach, is for people to participate. And so I don't want it to be like the city or our partners are downplaying the importance of that. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way just a little bit. So I can agree that, frankly, I don't think it meets the criteria to uphold what the Planning Commission voted on based on the information we've been presented with. I just don't think there's substantive information that proves that this is a public health issue per the guidelines that we're allowed to follow. And all, varying opinions aside, we do need to meet those guidelines. And I based on the diagrams you've shown and the pictures, the renderings, it doesn't seem like a very significant aesthetic issue, although I realize that tastes vary and opinions are going to vary about that. But I do have a concern about the ability in the lease to, I know we're not here to talk about the lease tonight, but because we're talking about the aesthetic issue, I'm wondering if the applicant can please speak to the likelihood of adding additional structures or additional apparatus to the water tower. How likely is that? What would you anticipate? What would the public process be like, or would there be a public process? If you could speak to that, that'd be great.
Well, who knows what's going to occur in the future. Technology evolves. It's difficult for me to stand here tonight and say, this is what we anticipate in the future. My job is to deal with projects and design them to suit the needs of Verizon in the current and near future timelines. If Verizon was going to install additional equipment, they would have to comply with FCC requirements. And that isn't to say that other carriers couldn't come in the door and also choose to co-locate. I could see AT&T coming in and wanting to place antennas on the tower, although I have no knowledge of that. So I don't mean to sort of dodge your question, but it's really difficult to say, what the future holds. There are regulations that state how a site complies with the requirements to add additional equipment, and we'd have to comply with those. And that's all I can say.
Okay. Well, given that the concern from the Planning Commission and from folks who came tonight was around aesthetics, it does seem like the contract should address those, and should there be additional, like a bunch of bulky stuff put on the water tower, then that might not meet the, this is what's being presented to us tonight, and we're proceeding based on what we've seen tonight. And I don't know, City Attorney, if you feel there's any way to include language around dramatic changes to aesthetics, at this juncture when we address the contract.
Well, I think there's opportunity to do to the contract whatever Verizon would agree to. And so they can voluntarily agree to a clause like that as an addendum to the contract, or however we want to approach it structurally. So that's certainly possible. As far as the contract, I don't think we want to spend too much time on it tonight, because you're going to be exploring it next time.
Sure.
But it's my opinion that contract is not binding on the city. Verizon may have a very different view, and I would hope that we don't have to knock heads over that. But I think there's reason to believe that even though it has two signatures on it, it's not currently binding. It's awkward, but it's not currently binding.
It still needs to come to us for approval.
Pardon?
So it still needs to come to us for approval.
That's
so we could
the reason it's coming to you.
Approve it.
That is possible.
So.
The reason that it's coming to you is because I think you are the only spokesperson for the city of Eureka that has a signature authority or authorized to grant signature authority to the mayor or city manager.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to kind of sort that out in the time between now and the next meeting. Do others feel similarly about? I don't know.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say to Mark, so do you feel like that there's going to be some knocking heads happening? Do you feel like you're going to contest this contract that was signed with,
Well, what I wouldn't want to see happen,
let's be straight,
what I wouldn't want to see happen is that we have a hearing and we start negotiating a lease at a hearing. It's really not the format.
I'm not asking you to
Okay.
negotiate the lease. What I'm asking you is, our city attorney is saying that the contract, am I hearing this correctly? The contract that is currently out there is not a legitimate contract. And what I'm asking you is, do you agree with that or not agree with that?
Yeah, and I'm not prepared to address that. I
Yeah.
have specific instructions to not discuss the the lease. It's just not the format to do such. But I would encourage you, Verizon wants to, we work with utilities and different jurisdictions all over the state. This is not, we're not reinventing the wheel here. This has been done thousands of times. So Verizon is a good partner. That they're looking to improve communications. We work with jurisdictions on a regular basis. I would say reach out to myself and we can start a dialogue. If there are specific issues that you want to discuss in the lease, let's start a dialogue that, before this hearing. Let's not go to the hearing and then start negotiating a lease. We tried that at the Planning Commission hearing. It was a disaster, quite frankly. It was,
I'm not interested in
Okay.
negotiating the lease. I just had a
Okay.
question for you.
Okay.
Okay?
So,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
I do have, sorry to be
You're
being a
fine.
dead horse here.
Go ahead.
I would like to make sure that it's clear that it's one thing to add, like another little something to optimize their operations. It's another to be building like the Tower of Sauron around the, I don't know what the extent of the potential changes that could happen over 55 years would be, but I imagine they could be great. So given that all of the comments we've heard, we have to take at face value. People appreciate the water tower. It's a landmark for folks in that neighborhood. So then I want to make sure that we're not drastically altering the water tower beyond what we've seen tonight in the future. And that's all. So I just hope we can include that.
As do I.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more comment? Okay, please vote.
For yes votes, Councilmember Messner absent, motion carries.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in 5 to 7 minutes. Other items that need to be pulled this evening? If not, can I get someone to move?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor? Or please vote.
Aye.
For yes votes, Councilmember Messner absent, motion carries.
Thank you. So we have pulled item B7, which is the emergency declaration confirmation. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. So, as council knows, on October 9th, we had our first of our public safety power shutoffs in the month of October from PG&E due to high wind and fire in areas of the state. And due to that extreme wind and fire danger, we lost power for, kind of depend upon their 25, 26 hours. Number of businesses and government operations were affected by that power shutoff. And because of that, as city manager, I was able to declare the existence of a local emergency at approximately 11 a.m. on October 11th. But then, as follow-up to that, requesting council to adopt a resolution confirming the existence of a local emergency. We've been in the process of reaching out to business community to determine kind of as much as we can kind of exact nature of losses, but we're certainly trying to do all we can to assist the business community through this emergency for any potential funding that may be available.
Do you have any questions from council? Councilman Allison?
Thanks, Council Member Burgle. Pro Tem.
That's Burgell. Allison.
Hey, City Manager Sparks.
That was inappropriate.
My question was surveying businesses so far. Is there a possible estimate of how much loss has occurred?
You know, I did not check with Swan Asbury before the meeting as to how that was coming along. I know just some broad examples was like North Coast Co-op with 3 locations had over $100,000 in losses. I'm not sure what their specific Eureka was. We also saw from, the Green Diamond that was reported on the 2, ships that weren't able to come into our port and had to be diverted, and that was some pretty extensive, not so much necessarily specific to Eureka, but had certainly that whole ripple effect through our economy. So we'll continue to pull those numbers together. I think we've probably got the majority of them. It looks like the clerk has some.
Swan had provided me with an update. She's heard from 32 businesses with a total of $209,000.
And that's just in the city. So that doesn't even consider the region.
Yes, that'd be just the city.
And that doesn't even take into account like lost wages for people who missed work because of power outages, things like that either.
I don't know how much some of those may be included in their business losses, but then certainly what we saw then with the subsequent events, we had the one day where we were projected to have a power outage by early in the morning. A lot of businesses chose not to open that day, believing that power would go out at any time. Instead, it was much later in the day. PG&E informed us that because of the weather conditions, we would not see power shut off. So, right, it has impacts to businesses whether the power is shut off or not because it creates a level of uncertainty. Certainly, I think it's become a major issue statewide, trying to get more certainty around this. And I think as we've had some discussions with council members, it just seems like a major issue, again, both state and on a local level, is going to be energy resilience and what are some, potential solutions, moving forward in the both near future and more distant future.
Definitely, thanks.
Okay. No further questions? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item?
I'd mentioned before an interest in creating a more energy independent Eureka. That was prior to the power outages, so I just wanted to bring that up again and maybe look into finding a way to find funding for solar panels and batteries and little wind power on city buildings and things like that, schools, and have these little energy hubs around town so that we can reduce these losses in the future. I think that'd be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is anybody else here from the public would like to comment? Seeing no one, I'll return it to council for a motion or comments.
I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council confirming the existence of an emergency in the City of Eureka beginning on October 9th, 2019 due to the public safety power shutoff.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Wait, I'll just say something.
Oh, sure. You can make a comment. Councilmember Castellano.
Let's see. I did pull this just because I really want the public to know that we know this is important, and that we are looking into, this emergency declaration. I really appreciate, City Manager Sparks, that you went forward with this, and we are looking into energy resilience and moving, I think that's at the forefront on many of our minds. I also want to just speak briefly to like the small losses that really affected people personally. For example, I was talking with someone who, receives food assistance, and, they lost a refrigerator's worth of food, and then went and got their food assistance, and then bought more food, and then lost it again. And it was just that really affects people on a very personal, day-to-day level. And so we definitely hear you, and we're working on this. And please, businesses and people, keep sending us and telling us your stories and experiences and what you lost, so that I think it's really important to have a record of these things as we move forward.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Messner absent, motion carries.
Okay. So moving on to ordinances and resolutions. C1, removal of 2-hour parking time limit on A, B, C, and D streets between 5th and 7th streets, and on 6th and 7th streets between C and E streets.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So over the summer, with the hiring of an additional parking enforcement person there in the police department, staff began receiving phone calls from citizens regarding parking tickets. Most of the calls involved parking between the areas of A Street and E Street between 5th and 7th. And people seem to be aware of the fact that they were parking in areas that had been designated as 2-hour parking, but they had been doing so for years, and enforcement just hadn't been there. So with this new enforcement, people understood the regulations that were there, but they wanted to know if they could be changed. So our staff went out and evaluated the conditions, saw that there aren't a lot of businesses that really depend upon short-term parking. And it seemed appropriate in these areas to change to the no parking restriction sort of methodology. Staff went door to door in the affected area to see how the businesses neighboring those parking areas felt. And after visiting approximately 20 businesses, all but one expressed extreme support for the change to all-day parking. So this matter went before the Transportation Safety Commission at their October 8th meeting, and they recommended that it be moved forward to the City Council for consideration. There's a map on page 308 of your agenda packet that shows the locations that would be changed from 2-hour to all-day in green, and locations of current all-day parking in blue. So you've got staff's recommendation. If you've got any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Would anyone like to, or are there any questions? No? Okay, would anyone from the public like to speak on this issue? Item? Seeing no one, we'll bring it back to council for a motion. I'll make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council removing 2-hour parking restrictions on A, B, C, and D streets between 5th and 7th streets, and on 6th and 7th streets between C and E streets.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Messner absent, motion carries.
Okay. Moving on to C2, Memorandum of Understanding, Eureka Police Officers Association. See Director Folger coming up.
Good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem,
Good
and
evening.
Council. My name is Will Folger, Director of Human Resources, and I'm pleased to be here today to announce that we have concluded negotiations with the Police Officers Association with the City of Eureka. EPOA contacted my office in May
to initiate negotiations of a successor MOU, a memorandum of understanding, between the city and the bargaining unit. Since that time, the city and EPOA held a series of productive meetings where, after bargaining in good faith on both sides, a tentative agreement was reached in early September, and EPOA membership voted to accept the city's proposal on September 18th of this year as well. This agreement authorizes a 2% base salary increase for all EPOA represented employees effective October 1st of this year, and formalizes several changes that were previously agreed to by side letter during the term of the prior contract, and those changes can be found in the summary of revisions which you have before you. If adopted by council, this successor MOU will be in full force and effect through the end of the 2020 calendar year with a term date of December 31st, 2020 at 11:59 p.m. The city currently enjoys good relations with its Police Officers Association and wishes to maintain this relationship. More importantly, the city recognizes the unique efforts of its law enforcement officials and support staff and wishes to reward and retain such valuable employees. Therefore, you have staff's recommendation in front of you to adopt this successor MOU with EPOA, and I'm available if you have any further questions.
Do we have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions? No? Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this item? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for a motion or comments, or both.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council authorizing the mayor to execute a memorandum of understanding between the City of Eureka and the Eureka Police Officers Association, effective through December 31st, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments? Okay, please vote.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Mesner absent, motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to C3, City Manager Employment Agreement. Can we have a report? Mr. Manager?
I have never reported on a city manager employment agreement before, but So Section 600 of the Charter establishes the office of the city manager and delineates the duties of the manager. This employment agreement has been negotiated at the direction of the council, provides the conditions of employment and the employment relationship of the city manager. Eureka Municipal Code 34.32 states that the salary of the city manager shall be established by resolution and approved by the city council. So the recommendation before you is authorize the mayor to execute the city manager at-will employment agreement with Dean Lauder and adopt a resolution of the city council establishing the salary of the city manager position at $170,000 annually.
Okay, are there any questions? Councilmember Arroyo?
I just have one about the evaluation criteria to be developed jointly by the city and the employee. I was under the impression that we developed the criteria by which we wanted to evaluate our employees. But so is this a change or is this something that we've had and I just didn't know?
I believe that's the same language that was has been in the past agreement, and I believe, I think when we did the first performance evaluation that I had with council, we, as well as the other two direct council appointees, I think we had proposed a kind of a performance evaluation form and got council feedback on that. So I think it does tend to be kind of a joint thing in terms of making sure that we're both the city manager and the council is kind of clear on the performance objectives. One of the other things that was done as well, and I'm not sure what the city attorney is passing on to me, but
That says 175, didn't you say 170?
170. That's in the
resolution says 175.
That's an important.
okay, it should be 170.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. And kind of lost my train of thought. So one of the other things that was done too at the time, the Hugh Life was chosen as a recruitment firm. There's also a optional piece in there called an onboarding section. And I think that's still to be determined by council if you want to utilize those optional services. But I think they're really kind of geared at trying to make sure that next city manager kind of clearly understands kind of the council manager working relationship. So I think that'll be something that'll be more explored as probably shortly after Mr. Lauder comes on board.
Sorry, could you point out where that is?
That's actually not in the agreement. I guess I'm saying that as somewhat of a
Oh.
side piece that
Okay.
as to whether or not you want to pursue those services. But certainly it becomes very important that the council and the manager are on the same page from day one, and certainly the strategic plan that's done by the council and the staff every year provides a guideline. But I think as council knows, there's always other things besides just the kind of strategic visioning that come up that are kind of important in the overall working relationship. So
Okay.
for the most part, the agreement is, yes, very similar to the agreement I had with.
Okay.
City.
And my copy does say 170, so it may be that there was an error in a previous one, but ours, I think, does say 170. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? So could you just speak a little bit to the background check? I know with when
Right.
you were hired, there was a very extensive background check. Could you speak to the one that happened with Mr. Lauder?
Yes, I should have brought those notes. I did kind of verify that with the recruitment firm that they ran local, state, federal criminal background checks on all the locations that Mr. Lauder had lived in for the previous 20-some years. Credit check, sex registry check, as well as the reference checks that were done with employers. So I think those are some of the main things that were done. So really, in a sense, to verify, as well as I think a thorough, Google type check of background and articles and that type of thing. So
And was there a difference between the background check that you went through and the background check that Mr. Lauder
yeah,
went through?
I think the city council decided to do a very extensive background check when I was hired, somewhat as a result of as the city coming through a previous city manager that was a very short term, and I think that was just kind of a red flag to the council. They wanted to just make sure that was vetted a little more carefully.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Okay. So, is there anyone from are there any more questions? Does anyone from the public want to comment on this item? Wish to comment on this item? Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council.
I'll make the recommendation to authorize the mayor to execute the city manager at will employment agreement with Dean Lauder and adopt a resolution of the city council establishing the salary of the city manager position at $170,000 annually.
I'll second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Are there any further comments? So I just would like to say that I'm really looking forward to working with Mr. Lauder. I did not really, there were parts of the process that really bothered me, and I just want to say that for the record. And moving forward, I hope that we will be able to look at those, and we have a little bit, and move forward. But I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Lauder, and I think it's going to be great for our city. Although we will miss Mr. Sparks. We were hoping for 3 more years. Please vote if you don't have any more comments.
4 yes votes, Councilmember Messner absent, motion carries.
City manager reports. So, Mr. Manager, do you have another report? Yes. You do?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Public Works Director Brian Gerving will come up and just give a brief update on the 101 Broadway multimodal corridor plan public workshop that's coming up on November 13th.
Wonderful, thank you.
I probably covered it all already.
Oh, sorry.
That is pretty much it. So As council is aware, the city, along with HCOG and Caltrans, received a strategic partnership grant to pursue or to prepare a multimodal corridor plan for Broadway as it goes through the city of Eureka. The first public part of that process is a public workshop on November 13th. So next week at the Wharfinger building at 6:30, there will be food, there will be drinks, and presentations about the background, presentations about alternatives that have already been looked at to one extent or another, and then asking for public input on those and trying to get feedback on what's already been thought of, and in addition to that, new thoughts from the public that maybe staff from some of these agencies or our consultant haven't thought of. So, there are a lot of people with opinions about Broadway. I think that Lost Coast Outpost said we're looking for how to fix the horror show that is Broadway, and I don't think many of us would disagree. So we encourage people to come out and give us some good input, and we'll take that and run with it.
Thank you. Councilmember Allison, did you have a question for Director Griffing?
Just a comment. I'd also like to remind people who, the 286 commenters who did respond on the Lost Coast Outpost, that is not the place to comment your concerns about Broadway. I just thought that was kind of funny because everyone took the time to comment on there, but who's actually going to show up to the meeting, we'll see.
That said, is there going to be some kind of survey or other means for people who cannot attend this meeting to provide their input?
There will be more outreach over time in addition to additional workshops. There will be tabling at businesses along Broadway. That's already started. I think they're at Pearson's this week. They're going to be putting in time at Eureka Natural Foods, I think, is another one. So we're going to be getting additional input, and there is a project website, which is EurekaBroadwayCorridorPlan.com, and people are always welcome to email staff with their thoughts as well.
Thank you. Okay, this brings us to council reports. Do we have any council reports? Councilmember Castellano.
Yes. Let's see. Just give a quick rundown of the things I attended. I attended the Key documentary last night, where I got to see Councilmember Burgell speak amongst other really wonderful panelists at Jefferson Community Center. The Eureka Schools 2x2 meeting, the Eddie Alexander Community meeting where we received feedback for the marketing survey, Cooperation Humboldt meetings, Uplift Eureka volunteering, the League. I did travel to the League of Cities conference in Long Beach along with staff, and that was very engaging and interesting, and if anyone wants to talk more about that, please contact me. Let's see, I do want to mention, just again reiterate my desire to collaborate with the county on sustainable energy systems, especially looking at some alternative models and how they may fit here in Eureka. And then also, this is something I just wanted to bring up to council, is that earlier this week I was at a meeting with the head of the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Analysis at Humboldt State University, and they are looking at doing a longitudinal survey of well-being in Eureka. And so this would be something that would happen every year. And there's been examples like this that have already happened, in the U.S. I think the most well-known one is in Detroit, where it was a survey that basically happened every year with kind of the same questions every year for 50 years, and then was able to really give people feedback around people's experiences of Detroit. This particular survey, the staff there or the faculty there would create the base questions, but council would have the opportunity to sort of create like a select array of questions every year, so we could kind of fine tune or ask things that we thought were important to us. they don't really need council approval to do this. It's just surveying people. But they would be really excited if council was excited to promote it and support it. And, you know, one of the results would be to that they would create a community wellness dashboard in which, you know, it would be really easy to access people's sense of wellness in Eureka. And then, of course, so these would be students who'd be kind of conducting the survey as part of their training. And so ideally, the students would then come back and report to council, you know, like an annual report on their survey. So it would be also a nice connection with HSU and, you know, really involving students in our processes here.
Thank you. Welcome home, Councilmember Arroyo.
Thank you. I was gone all month on Coast Guard duty in coastal South Georgia. So I'm just getting back and I'm still acclimating to the time change. So for me, it's definitely after 1 a.m. Or around 1 a.m. So beyond that, I haven't been around much. So I am just getting caught back up. I encourage folks who would like to connect with me to do so because I am here now. I did get invited to speak at the Northern California Association of Nonprofits, a training on the 13th, or a workshop, really a public workshop about advocacy and working closely with nonprofits and, you know, nonprofits and government working together. And so some of my experiences as a nonprofit employee and then as a city council member and, you know, being able to, my hope is to shed some light on how to work effectively together. And so I'll be speaking at that. That is Wednesday the 13th in the morning, 9 to 11, I believe. And beyond that, I'm still getting my schedule dialed in, so I will have more to report on the 19th.
Thank you. Councilmember Allison?
I also attended the League of Cities meeting down in Long Beach, and it's always a good time there. There's lots of things to learn about and explore, see what the best practices might be for certain subjects, such as housing, manufacturing, homeless, stuff like that. So it's always nice to go and see what the next best thing is. I just want to also tell the community that St. Joseph Hospital in Eureka, the NUHW union, we voted to strike, and it was a 91% yes vote. So on November 20th, which is a Wednesday, employees of St. Joseph Hospital will be striking, as well as the employees at the Petaluma Hospital and Queen of the Valley Hospital, as well as the Santa Rosa Hospital. Union negotiations have been pretty awful lately, and so it's kind of come out, this strike has sort of come out of necessity at this time. So there will be, I believe, coverage there. The hospital will be hiring some temp people to cover, but November 20th, there will be a strike out in front of the hospital.
Thank you. Well, I just have a couple things, a little more positive. So I attended Boo at the Zoo, and I got to be a judge again this year. And I tell you, if you haven't been to that event, I highly encourage you to go. These kids are so adorable in their little costumes, and their little families get together and dress up. It's just adorable. And then secondly, no one's mentioned it, so I'll mention it. Best day of my life besides having my kids, the return of Telluride Island happened. Unfortunately, Councilmember Arroyo, who worked diligently on this project, wasn't there, but she is in the Keep movie, so if you get an opportunity to look at that, you can hear more of her thoughts. She did an excellent job. But what a... Oh, and she was there too. She was there videoing, but she wasn't there to be able to comment. But anyway, it was a big deal, and it was important, and I'm hopeful that there's going to be a lot of positive changes happening in our city because of it. And it took far too long, but we did it. So that's awesome. And with that, we are adjourned.
Love that guy.